Nestled in the cool shadows of the bluffs just upstream from the mighty Mississippi is Pickwick, a sleepy little town where Thomas Grant and Wilson Davis built a grand flour mill in 1856. Today's residents are restoring this landmark and discovering the golden age of milling in southeastern Minnesota.
The Pickwick actually got started because of this mill. The two gentlemen come up from Ohio and staked a claim on the land and built a cabin so they'd have shelter, and then that was 1854, and then that fall when it got cold they went back to Ohio, and then the next spring, 1855, they came back and they brought 5 more families with them so they'd have help to put this up. They actually built a sawmill here first. The two wives that came up here, the one had read the Dickens papers, and she liked that, and that's how she happened to name the town of Pickwick, was because it was in the Dickens papers. Well, I'm Vic Gardner, and I've been with the Pickwick Mill here for about the last 16 years. When they came up here and seen that the stream was here and it had a good drop on the land here so they could put in their dam, and it's a spring-fed stream about 4 miles up the creek here. There's a big spring that feeds that, so it's a steady flow of water. When they first started here, when they had the 5 families, they built a sawmill so they get the material to put this building up. And then they started on this building, and it took 4 years to put it up. And the stone all came from a local stone quarry. And when you consider that this was all hand done, you know, I mean, they didn't have all these big hoists and stuff. It's kind of hard to believe that they moved all this stuff in here like that. When they were grinding flour all the time, to begin with, they were grinding wheat. And they used to raise a lot of wheat up on the hills. And they claim they came a long ways, but I can't believe that they came too awful far, because they were coming with oxen and horses, and you did not have these nice roads. It was down through the ditches and through the water and what have you to get here. And they couldn't, their wagons weren't that big, they couldn't haul that much in them. But they were bringing it here to sell it. When we went back and looked at the old ledger books, you could see in the fall of the year where they were going to the bank and borrowing money to buy wheat because they were grinding it or storing it, and then after a while they quit borrowing money and they started selling flour. And so you could just about follow it through by watching the bank accounts. Well, when they brought it in, down on the main floor, which is the 3rd floor, they unloaded it into a hopper down there, and that's hooked on a scale. So they could weigh it, and they knew how much they were bringing in because they were bringing it here to sell. Once they weighed that, then they opened the door in the bottom of that hopper, and the grain would go clear to the bottom floor. Down there, there's a big holding bin down there, and there's a conveyor belt that runs all the way from the bottom floor to the top floor that has buckets on it that carries that grain way to the top. And then they could direct it where they wanted to go, if they wanted to put it in storage or if they wanted to grind it. If you look at the walls, you see there's plaster on the walls about 8 feet up or 6 feet. And that's because they were storing wheat up here. They always used to say that keep your nose to the grindstone. That's because that's how they could tell how to adjust their grinding stones, because they could smell that flour. If it was getting warm, they had it too close together, they'd have to separate it. And because once you got that flour too warm when you were grinding, that would kill the germ and then it would not bleach out like it should. Once they ground it, they went up to the top floor and it got spread out where it got bleached and stuff. And nowadays they use a chemical to bleach flour, but in them days, if you just left flour alone, it will bleach itself. Down on the 4th floor, we have a machine down there. It's quite rare. It's one of the only ones like it in captivity. It's what they call a Midland purifier. It's really a complicated machine. It's got a shuttle auger in there. It's got a conveyor that runs at full length. It's got brushes that brush the coarse particle from the grain. And up on top it had a big blower that blew all the dust up to the top floor where it went into the dust room. And every so often they'd have to shut things down and bag up that dust that's in that room. It was no good for anything. They just bagged it up, and I'm quite sure it went over the hill. But that they didn't have as many inspectors walking around behind them at that time either, you know. But no, they had good housekeeping because they never had a fire here. And I don't know why, because they used kerosene lanterns a lot. And but they evidently were good housekeepers because they did not have a fire in here in all of them years. And it doesn't take much to blow that stuff out. That dust will blow up like gasoline. Well, when they were grinding flour 24 hours a day, they were grinding for the Union Army. And they shipped the flour overseas and all over. And they would take it down to 2 miles down here to the river, and then they would put it on a boat and a rail and ship it out. It's living history, and if we didn't preserve it, once it's gone, it can never be replaced.